All right, and we're live.
Hey, welcome to EIPIP Meeting 13. The agenda is in the Ethereum Cat Herders repository under EIP issues number 25. This is also being live streamed. Is it on the ETH Cat Herders live stream or the
Yeah, ETH
Ethereum?
Cat Herders live stream on YouTube.
It's on the ETH Cat Herders live stream. Thank you all for coming. We just had a really good session with the ETH magicians about the EIPIP meetings that I'd recommend people go watch if you want to know more about the meta process of how EIPs came together. Let's just go right into the agenda, which I saw the first thing that was moved up to being the network upgrade process, which you had a note on that you wanted to talk about that first, Edson. Do you want to introduce that?
Yeah, so it's something that we started with statuses separating the network upgrade process. We never actually finished it before we started talking about onboarding and updating the EIP template. One thing I wanted to suggest for writing out a new process is like one method for creating solutions, which is there's two parts in creating a solution. So you have the idea and then you evaluate that idea. Something that we could do, something that's used in the creative process is creating multiple different solutions before the call, and then just having, so for the hard fork process, it would be multiple different ways that hard fork coordination could happen. And then once we have a selection of things to choose from, we could evaluate them and then break it apart and see what works and what, and maybe deconstruct and combine solutions to have a better solution that we would have gotten had we just gone with the first thing we thought of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that.
So the process is pretty simple. It's just, instead of just creating one solution, we create, say, 10 different processes we can choose from, quickly present them on the call, and then as a group evaluate them, if that makes sense, to create one process that we can decide on.
Does anyone? I've had one in my mind. I just need to write down. But I mean, I feel like it would be better if there was more contribution than just myself. Is there others that are interested in writing out like if let's say we scheduled for doing it for the next EIPIP meeting? Is there some other people that want to draft even just rough ideas on how it works together?
I can draft a few.
Sweet. I almost feel like we should
Likewise.
not work together, but just kind of spend a bit thinking about it and see what we come up and then come together, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Like, have it prepared beforehand and then discuss it as a group, or evaluate it as a group, if that makes sense.
Someone else had a comment.
I can also maybe draft some ideas.
Sweet. It makes sense to me. A couple of things I would propose in this when talking about the network upgrade process is that we release it before we do the EIP changes, the EIP status changes, and that it be its own separate EIP, which I think we've talked about before. That's just has cemented more on my and recently that that's a good direction.
Why do you think it should come before the changes and the EIP process?
Because if we remove the hard fork coordination part from the EIP process and then like accepted is no longer a status, then there's a huge opportunity. There's an opportunity for backlash from the community because there's like well, how do things get put into mainnet? And so I think it would be easier to have that defined somewhat, even if it's not fully defined. I don't think we want to define it all out, but we should at least have an EIP that we can point to people saying, oh yeah, well, we separated it and here is the proposal for the other part, not just we separated it and nothing has, and there isn't anything for the
Okay.
process.
I think that sounds really good. I think the separation is needed, and I also think that, which we've discussed before, obviously, and kind of everyone kind of agreed that there needs to be a separation, but also having it explicit once we make the changes, even if it's in its infancy, like just like a basic form, is important.
I'm not sure if this is the right point to bring this up, but so just cut me off if we want to talk about it another time. But I had a comment on the agenda thread that I feel like there should be a status for a state of the art or mainnet EIP. And I feel like this is, if we have an additional EIP that describes what the network upgrade process is, and how it's not tied to the roles of the editors in the repository, then that just becomes sort of like a bookkeeping duty for the editors to change an EIP status to state of the art mainnet once it like is actually included in a hard fork.
So there's
And
actually.
Micah,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say, so Micah had rebutted this point, and he was basically saying that his general view is that the EIPS repository is not necessarily just focused for Ethereum. It's more focused for any Ethereum-like things. If another project is using the EVM, maybe they want to have a finalized EIP that they're using that's not ever going to make it onto mainnet Ethereum. Where I'm coming from a different point of view, where I feel like the EIPS repository is for Ethereum, and if other projects want to use that, then they should develop their own procedures for maintaining what standards they have.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. If they, I mean, like all the other, or every major EVM chain has their own version of EIPs. So I don't see why anyone would from other chains would even want to. Like no one from other chains has even asked to use our repo. So I don't see the point there.
I think so. From my understanding, looking at other like smart contract platforms, they actually do use the EIP repo, but they use like ERCs. Um, so they use like they have their version of ERC 20 that's based on the EIP 20, and then they have their version of non-fungible tokens that was taken from the EIP repo. But as far as standards go, usually standards are platform agnostic, just in other industries, and they exist there to be kind of like like how experiments exist, and then you can reproduce them. It's kind of similar to standards.
It's just difficult with Ethereum. This is a different, very different paradigm. If I have an upgrade for TCP, then we can still negotiate our protocol using like an older version of TCP potentially. Where with Ethereum, once we make a network upgrade, everyone is on this. There's no way that I can say I'm using this old version of Ethereum. That's just a complete different fork of it. And so I feel like that should be represented within the process, even if it's just a bookkeeping thing, and the actual selection of those EIPs are in a totally separate discussion.
So I definitely needs, there's like, what is Ethereum? The definition of what is Ethereum, as in what is mainnet, should be kept track of somewhere. And how the best way to do that, I'm not totally sure, but I definitely think it's worth something we should keep on the agenda and keep bringing up until we figure out the best way to do it.
And
I think
oh, go ahead, Edson.
one thing we can do is say we define the network upgrade process, because currently we don't exactly know what it'll end up being. We could just create a new header that tracks that as a compromise. That way, it doesn't have to be tracked manually. It could be tracked. I mean, obviously you'd have to manually edit the header, but we could have another section in the EIP website that just tracks mainnet, and that would simplify it for people who are trying to create a new client. So they have somewhere to look at in addition to the yellow paper.
The only thing is, Light Client made the point that there would be overhead for editors to go in and merge those changes all the time. So I think that a good in between would be having those hard fork processes as separate EIPs, but have them be in active status. So what that means is there never needs to be editor input in order for it to be merged. An active EIP can continually be edited and merged without consent of the editors. Is how we can is how we can frame it. Right now, in active EIP, that's not the case because, like, I think for an example, I think EIP1 is an active EIP, like that's the status. But if we make it so that we can just have these active EIPs be able to be changed whenever, except for EIP1, I think that would be okay.
So I actually we had already proposed that. So I think EFI we're gonna make active,
Hmm.
but like client was saying, we should just have the status instead of creating a new EAP.
Oh, I see.
I mean,
And if we, so the, like Black client had talked about how we could make a permissions that there's a group that could do tags and edit tags. If we could make it so there's a group that would be able to edit that field that isn't the EIP editors. If it's bookkeeping, then we can have permissions for bookkeepers that aren't EIP editors.
I feel like the overhead on editors is pretty small. I mean, we're not doing network upgrades that often, and there's really not that many EIPs that go into it. It should be pretty quick for them to see, okay, this is mainnet. This was included in the hard fork. Yes, we're going to update the status for that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Also, I really don't like the idea of the active EIPs. I think that EIP should be static standards, and I feel like this is a sort of a tooling problem. Like the reason we're wanting to have this active EFI EIP is because we don't have a better place to necessarily put it. I don't see why we can't have this as a part of the EIPs.ethereum website where someone is modifying the repository. I don't see any reason. I don't see any difference between having an EFI EIP that's active all the time versus just having it on a website somewhere. Because the network upgrade process is already different than the EIPs process. So having an active EIP as a registry is really just trying to hack something into the standard process that can live outside of it.
So your proposal is to completely have a separate repo with the hard fork process, right?
I don't really care how it's done. It could be a separate repo. It could be a separate folder in the EIPs repo. It could be a form, whatever. I just don't think that the registry EIPs make a lot of sense.
It does feel hacky sometimes. What were you saying, Pooja?
So if I may break this question into two parts, like there is one part about active status, another part is about EFI. We are talking about EFI to be in the active status. So I believe that for active status, we are clear that it is required not only for EFI EIP, but for the EIP1, and possibly we would have a couple of more EIPs that may require this kind of a status. And for EFI, the registry EIP, I think that if it is just about maintaining a list, I may partially agree to like friends saying that it can be maintained separately. But since this is everything related to protocol, I feel that if we give that EFI, the status of EIP would help people understand more what the level of importance of that list and the protocols that are there.
I think like something to consider with the EFI, if it is inactive, is it won't actually track what's deployed. What will track what's deployed is an EIP that is a hard fork EIP where it tracks the hard fork names like Muir Glacier, what EIPs are included. So Berlin EIP, BLS is included and has a list of EIPs. So that'll be its own EIP, which you can look up and see what's canon to Ethereum and what's in mainnet. And then EFI would just be tracking what's currently being discussed. So things may go into EFI and things may leave EFI. Does that make sense?
Right. Whatever goes under the mainnet deployment, that is separately listed in the hard fork meta for that upgrade. But the EAPs that are currently under consideration, we do not have any specific place to kind of list those EIPs which may or may not be going into the hard fork.
Listening to Light Client, I am actually more on the page of having it be separated, because it would be, so for example, I sometimes hesitate making PRs because it inflates. If I make a ton of little changes, then I've moved the EIP number up 100 for doing tiny things. Where if it was in a separate repo, then I would be a lot more comfortable making changes all the time. And pretty much all but EIP1, the meta EIPs are related to the hard fork stuff and the registry things. I don't know. I think I have maybe been a little bit too, I guess having an attitude of we only have what we have and how to work with what we have versus stepping outside of that a little bit. And this is actually making me think. Hudson, what are your thoughts? If we had like a separate network upgrade repo, is that
Um,
crazy?
no, I think that's a good idea. I think that might actually be cool also because you can start on that before we even finish the EIPIP stuff.
Yeah, and I could be I'm hesitant to be an EIP editor because I feel like that's kind of a conflict of interest or something. I don't know. Like having if I'm doing the network upgrade process, I shouldn't also be over the EIP process. So then it would be really easy for me just to get started working on the network upgrade stuff and be an admin there, but not in the EIP part. So there's separation.
Yeah, I like that idea. Anyone else have comments on that? I think Chloe had something on the chat. Stay active. Would that satisfy both issues? Oh, um, yeah, I think that's similar to what we're talking about. We could have it as a subsection of the EIP repo, but I guess the one issue there would be we would have to give different GitHub level permissions to James that would allow him to potentially mess with other stuff. Not that we don't trust James, but he could get malicious suddenly and mess with other stuff within the EIP repo. Grow a mustache, twirl it, tie someone to train tracks, that whole deal. So we don't want him messing around in there.
Uh,
That makes sense. 100.
I
I
like
was just wondering, would it work? So
What was that, James?
I like the idea of separating out explicitly also as the signal that they're separate.
Yeah, sounds good. I think we can go. I think we should go ahead with that unless anyone has any objections to doing that. I say we. It's really James, but James, if you want help, obviously tap me in or other
I
people.
mean, it's me, and then we would need to do it it would be under the Ethereum repository, I assume. So
Yeah, I can make a repo if you need.
it'd be me talking to you about getting it done.
Cool.
That would make a lot of this easier. That was a good point. Thanks for bringing that up, like client. Does that resolve your concerns there?
I like it.
Did you say you like it?
I do like it.
Okay, cool.
I think we can go to the next item, right, James? Or was there anything else on this one?
No, I muted myself and then started talking.
Oh,
So yeah, for the next item, onboarding EIP editors, and we've got about 30 minutes. So I'll move through some of these a little bit faster. Survey to set expectations of an EIP editor, triaging permissions.
I created a survey.
Mm-hmm.
Let me bring it up. And I'll send a link, but it's just 3 questions. I'd like feedback on if I should add or remove anything before I send it out.
Do you want to go through it right now or just have us read through it.
I sent it. I put a link. I asked what tasks are expected of an EIP editor. What is a good requirement for someone to become an EIP editor? Do you have any recommendations for new EIP editors?
I'm not sure if it's just me, but the first question is showing F.
I edited that. It should be correct when it's sent out.
I
Okay,
would
cool.
I would add, how much time do you feel an editor should spend a week being an editor?
Yeah, and maybe a couple of more
Not
specific
worded like that.
tasks, couple of more specific tasks, like, questions, maybe like, in what circumstances, like we are trying to collect information about when we can onboard. I mean, like when, who, and how, these three things. So like if certain criterias are met, we can onboard that people, and what are those criterias, we need to define that. And we also need to define when, I mean, like in cases when we have to like remove any editor, so what can be those circumstances, if we can get this information as well. And how is like if we can, like I mentioned in the previous meeting, also James added that there should be availability for meetings, like quarterly or monthly or whatever number of hours per month or per week, or some general guideline that would be, in my mind, would be helpful in like making it more firm.
Any other feedback on questions? Okay.
Oh, actually, hold on. I had one and I just lost it. This is okay. The onboarding survey. What did I have in mind? I'll tell it to you later. Ed sent it. I lost it.
So
All
I
right.
think never mind. No, I think it covers everything that was discussed last session really well.
As far as onboarding, well, the triaging permissions. So let's talk about the triaging permissions group thing. Could you explain that, what that is to Hudson, like client?
So the triaging permission here I added coming from the previous meeting, where we discussed that possibly you would be looking into adding permission to some of the people who are from Ethereum Foundation and may be able to kind of label the PRs, and that would be helpful for EIP editors.
Yeah, and I talked to Hudson, and then
Okay.
it turned into talking to light clients, so then Hudson knows what to do with how to do it.
Yeah, if someone can tell me how to do it, I would be happy to facilitate, or if we can get like a test repo up so someone can walk me through what it'll do, because I'm always reticent to mess with settings on a very important repo.
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, we could do. I'm available to do that at any time. But basically, the only thing it's going to let people do is they're going to be able to use the tagging feature to tag information about PRs and issues. So I think like you've probably seen Axic go in and add some tags a while back. This would just allow new contributors to do that without having write permission to the repo.
Oh, that's great.
You should be able to do it if you just go into the settings and you look at. You would have to invite someone as a collaborator, and then you would set their permission rather than having write access. You would set it to the triage access.
Okay. Once we figure out who wants to do that, I'm happy to just real quick ask the editors if that's okay, and then so they're not off guard by someone adding tags, and then add a person, whoever wants to be a tagger.
Sounds good.
I think we should call them the Ethereum bookkeepers.
I like tagger because it reminds me of people who spray paint illegally.
That's pretty good. Would it be possible for me to be able to add people to that list, but not be an EIP editor, or are permissions that, like, can I help with that part?
I think it depends on what you're like organizational role in the Ethereum group is on GitHub. I think if you're an owner, you can do that. But if you aren't, I think you'd have to have right access to the EIP repo.
Is this just to do the thing we were just talking about?
Yeah, I think someone with right access to the EIP repo are the people who can add a triage contributor.
Oh, I have super admin, so I can do it.
I just was wondering if that's something I could help with without becoming having total right access to the repository.
Oh, probably not. Yeah, like Client was saying.
Yeah, because I'd be happy to help. There's a bunch of people here that should be there already.
Yeah, we can just get a list and I can add them. It's not a huge deal.
Cool. So I'll just point them. I'll just collect lists and send them to you.
Great.
Any last comments on that, the triaging permissions group, or I'll give it a second for anyone who has final thoughts. If not, we can move on to number 4. Number 3 is the new EIP validator and a suggestion to handle current validator. Is that you, client?
Yeah, I don't think there's any major updates from the last meeting. I was off for about a week, so I'm still working through. I have a list of requirements that I'm trying to get the validator to reach, and that's all in the README. So if you see anything on there that you disagree, or if you feel like there should be new things added, you can just ping me or add an issue to that repo, and I can have that added. One other thing about that, I had a comment on Gitter. I'll just post it here again so people can see it. There is maybe a little bit of confusion between the validator script and the merge bot. Those are two different components. So right now I'm working on the validator. This is just going to statically analyze EIPs to make sure they're conforming to whatever standards we have. Do they have all the sections? Are all the links to other EIPs relative? These sorts of things that editors are currently having to do manually. After that's complete, hopefully I can do some more work on the merge bot, and the merge bot is basically what manages the state transition types of changes. It's going to be determining if the author has moved from draft to review, and it's going to automatically accept that rather than forcing an EIP editor to review it. But if they want to obviously remove from review to finalized, and that's something that the EIP editor, and so all those things are managed by the merge bot.
Yeah, and that's great. Thank you for looking at that, because I have wanted some updates to happen, but it's just someone has to do it. Someone has to change the code.
Yeah, I think the merge bot is written by Nick Dodson. I think that it's pretty good in general. We just need to add some additions to it. The problem with the validator is that it just seems to crash in really unhelpful ways. And so that's why I'm rewriting it from scratch rather than just working with it. I think the merge bot kit is a lot more amenable to being updated.
I would be happy to help with the merge bot.
Great.
Something I'd like the merge bot to be able to do is to have subgroups of permissions. So if we had the triagers, if we also gave them permissions to be able to edit the footer, and then the merge bot would accept those.
That would be cool.
It would be helpful. And if the tracking things that are currently Ethereum, whoever is the triage bot, making updates to that. It would just be nice if there was another layer of bookkeeping that's possible, and have a group that is allowed to make those changes.
That's a really good idea. That's something I've been struggling with, because right now, if you have right access to the repo, you can do anything. And so this would be a really good way to give people very small amounts of access to things.
Yep.
I like that.
Let me pull up the agenda again. Any more thoughts or questions on that?
just to mention, there is a suggestion from Greg that is added in the, the link is added on the agenda item. So if that could also be considered, or people would want to discuss.
I will go and read it.
Mhm.
The one from, which one are you talking about? So is it the link to called a suggestion?
Right.
Which, so I'm seeing a comment from Light Client 29 days ago. Is that the one you're looking at, Pooja?
It's from Greg. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just not seeing the thing you're seeing, I think.
I think by mistake, I may have put the wrong link, is it? Never mind. I will just post the link in the chat. When Light Client and Elita would be looking into it, may consider that. It's coming up from the previous agenda, but we just somehow missed to discuss that. He has commented in the previous agenda.
Yeah. I'm just so it's is it the one that says the GitHub allows a special type of contributor with triage permissions?
Right.
Okay. So then I am looking at that. So the number 3 has, it would be good to agree on a specific naming convention for EIPs, since official documents use several different formats.
I'm sorry. I think it's like the current validator has a spell check. It might be good if some things could be handled as warning, merge the draft, but let author know there is a work to do. Things like wordy abstract and missing section.
Yep, that's something that the validator I'm working on will do.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to bring it to the attention.
Thanks, Pooja.
Thank you. Okay, so is there another point to discuss, Pooja? Oh, and here's Gray's comment. I'll open this.
Is this like a general question? Like, are there any other points or just for this topic specifically?
On the, well, I'd open it up to if you have a comment on something.
Yeah, I think that this is a really good topic. So I was considering kind of refactoring the current EIP1 in terms of layout. I really like the layout of the improvement proposal from Python or from JavaScript, I think that you sent in the chat. Or that it's in, I forget who sent it, but regardless, so I was thinking of going through and refactoring EIP1 as like a bit of a draft to give like a different layout, because the current one feels kind of bulky or clunky to me.
So what I think Alita is referring to, I posted the process for how JavaScript creates new releases. So like ECMA 2019, 2020, like ES6. On their website, I think they have a table with the status and then the description of that status. So it's like in a table format, I think is what she's referring to.
Yeah, and it was also a little bit of like, because we have a bunch of different categories and stuff, and so you could say just kind of organize, into columns and say, I mean, I'm not exactly sure how it would end up looking or if it's even feasible, but just in the sense of you can look at a single table and know, what are the guidelines, like maybe even with, spreading out some of the stuff with just some, markdown stuff. So we could have like a linked table that just goes to a different part of the document really easily, because the document's really long. So you can kind of have it nice and spread out.
So the reason I actually brought that up was this is how they decide what is released into JavaScript. So I was thinking of it as inspiration for hard fork coordination.
Okay.
But I mean, it's up to you guys what you think about reformatting EIP1.
I could also just like give it a try, and if you don't like it, we don't have to go with it. I think I'd be okay with that too.
Well, that sounds good to me. Do you have any thoughts, Hudson?
Sorry, I was muted. No, that sounds good.
Yep. Better formatting's better.
Cool. I'll try to get that by next meeting.
Moving on to discussion on Muir Glacier postmortem report PR 2809 and network upgrade postmortem template PR 2810. Do you want to take that, Pooja?
So before that, there is a comment from Micah, I guess, that is linked to item number 5, constraining the EIP repository scope. So he
Yep,
had,
you're right. Thank
yeah.
you.
So it's actually related, both of them. So please take over.
Go ahead, Lion.
Sorry, I just wanted maybe to suggest a different wording than post-mortem, because I feel like post-mortem usually has to do with when something goes wrong and we're writing a summary of what happened, where I think this is just generally we want to have an EIP that states the stats of the hard fork.
Yeah, I was more inclined towards marking it as like assessment report of, upgrade, network upgrade assessment document or report, something like that. But since traditionally we use the word postmortem, so I have no issues changing the wording.
I like retrospective personally.
That's a better word for it.
Yeah, I agree.
Are there not already EIPs that are tracking what like the network upgrade will consist of?
I think there are. So Micah's suggesting that we just remove all of that from the EIP repo and keep it only standards, which I think we've already decided in the beginning of the call. That's what we're going to do. We're going to keep, we're going to create a new repo basically for.
Well, we're skipping into discussion on the Muir Glacier postmortem. So let's finish this number 6 course, and then we'll go back to Micah's comments, because we jumped around a little bit on the agenda, which is my bad. Yeah, the retrospective I think is a better wording it. There's definitely things in Muir Glacier that went wrong, so that's why it was a postmortem. But we can call it a retrospective for all of them. That's fine. That's fine with me.
So I think I missed asking this question earlier. So I will be changing the name to like network upgrade retrospective for Muir Glacier for this particular. But there is this proposal of 2 pull requests. One is for the template in general, and one is for the Muir Glacier post and retrospective report. For Muir Glacier, what I'm getting is like from previous meetings of EIP, we have categorized it as informational EIP, and I've tried to document it with that. But Micah left some comments over there. Feel free to go back and reach to that. And for the template one, I was wondering, should it be informational or should it be, again, if we say meta, it's going to bring a lot of controversy, but I was just thinking about EIP 233, which talks about the process that is to be followed to create an meta EIP for network upgrade. So I was trying to relate. I'm happy doing either way, whichever community is like okay to do that. So just looking for some suggestions here.
So it sounds like it would be something that fits on the hard fork on the network upgrade repository.
Right.
So if there was a network upgrade repository, that the postmortems on the network upgrades or the retrospectives would fit there, which I think also solves Micah's concern.
Yeah, I think that definitely alleviates it a lot for sure.
Okay, so yeah, please.
I don't know. I feel like this fits well in the EIPS repository. It doesn't have to do with the governance at all. This is just purely informational. This seems like the exact reason to have an informational EIP to state something that happened.
Yeah, but if I guess the fewer EAPs that are non-standard, the better, is how I like to look at it. But that's like more of a personal opinion, I guess.
You're saying non-standard as in they are not standard.
No, they are not standards, like with an S. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I kind of feel like that we should have more informational EAPs, and maybe this isn't the right kind, but I feel like, Peter has been posting some stuff about the implementations of GET. There's been a lot of talk about how the databases are implemented. I feel like those are things that could be written as informational EAPs. They're not consensus requirements, but they are something to help future developers understand decisions.
I'm totally on that, and that's the argument I was trying to give there when in one of the comments to this PR. Like according to EIP1, we have these three different categories of EAP, like meta, standard, and this informational. So informational section is in my mind is created to provide more information, and that is a placeholder for important information and community reference kind of place. So in my mind, I don't find it wrong to be placed in EIP repository, but if people agree to have everything related to network upgrades separately, I don't mind that either.
I think Micah's point of view is that he's coming from this place where he believes that the EAPS repository should be generic to the platform. And so he doesn't think there should be anything on network upgrades because he believes that, there could be finalized EAPs that are not ever going to be used by the Ethereum mainnet. They might be used by a different project. And, my point of view is that that shouldn't be the case. This is the Ethereum improvement proposal repository. We should be focused on Ethereum related things. And so one of the most important parts about Ethereum is what is on mainnet and information about mainnet. I definitely think the governance process about what goes to mainnet should be separate from this, but I feel like we should have a singular focus on our Ethereum.
Yeah, so I could go either way. It could be in the hard fork one that James is creating, or it could be in the EIPs. But for now, since this is already a pull request in the EIPs repo, and I just looked over it a little more closely, and it's purely informational. It doesn't. Well, I can see these eventually becoming political as they get more detail, is something I just thought about. So, like, if someone screws up and then we have to put, yeah, like, the discovery of the problem, this client broke this, because we have had cases in the past, including a pretty major bug where a precompile was incorrectly, or there was a idiosyncrasy with a precompile, which is a really polite way of saying one of the two clients messed up reading the spec, but we don't know which client it was because there was disagreement about what the spec said based on their interpretation of it. So then there was this huge thing, and later Yoichi, who used to be more active in the EIP's repository, wrote up a really long, like, article that, like a GitHub thing that explained, you know, if anyone was at fault, like who was kind of at fault, who wasn't, and it became a whole deal. So I can see these in the future becoming more controversial and then them not fitting in the EIP repository.
Yeah, I similarly can see them both. I see both sides, so I don't want to push one in either direction.
And we could take more time to think about this and talk about it on Telegram, and then next meeting make a more immediate, or make a more final decision, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Unless, I mean, obviously if there's other comments, I don't want to stop anybody.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a big push to keep the EIP repo purely technical and remove politics wherever possible. It's just some feedback I've just been seeing.
Yeah, and there might be a time when politics need to be involved in a report like this, especially if it's going to continuously be written by groups that are not editors and people that are not, or like groups like the cat herders and James and other people who have similar groupings to James's position and what the cat herders do.
So you'll send all the politics and controversy to me. Got
Yep.
it.
Yep. Shipping it your way, one way, UPS.
Ooh, okay. Um, we've got 10 more minutes, so let's go over to on item 5, constraining the EIP repository scope.
I think we already talked about that in hard fork. We were considering creating a new repo for hard fork coordination to separate that out from the EIP repo. Something we can define is, in addition to separating stuff, just defining what the scope would be. So it would be, we could formally define it as for specifications and for standards. So that would include specifications. That would also include new processes. But I guess we would put that in EIP 1 if we were to create a scope.
Yeah, and thoughts on what we should call the network upgrade repo?
Upgrade.
Mainnet.
Mainnet.
Which repo
Mainnet
again?
coordination.
Well, so if we make a network upgrade repo or hard fork coordination repo,
Like when Hudson creates the new repo, what should it be called?
Oh, that. The one that's in the Ethereum organization. Okay, I thought that for some reason I was mixing up organization and repository.
or
Yeah.
I'd like to kind of open it up to think more about that at the last part of the meeting so I can have some feedback from people before I just kind of run with it.
Okay. I'll think about it before the end of the meeting.
Do you want to ask like the EF Hudson what it should be called?
Nah, they don't care. Not that they don't care about the process. I'm just saying, as far as naming goes, they don't care. If a repository needs to be made for whatever official reason, we don't have policies. Basically, like, it needs to be a good reason that you're making it, and it doesn't need to be abandoned. But otherwise, like, naming wise, there's not like hard and fast policies.
Is there anything else left to talk about related making a new repo for the network upgrade process that someone would like to bring up?
Yeah, so we're separating it. What if follow the same rules as the EIP repo? We could divert it, but I think just starting it off, we just have the same template. Or I mean, I guess we
I
could
don't know
figure
if it
that out
needs
as
that
we
much.
go.
I don't think it needs that much structure. I think it should just be whoever wants to put stuff in there, have people who want to be in charge approve it. People like James, and there needs to be organization, like folder separation, like how the PM repo is separated. But like one of them could be like a folder for retrospectives, and then there can be a template maybe, but that's like similar to EIPs, but it doesn't need to be super super strict unless people want it to be.
And have an EFI section and
Yeah, have an EFI subsection and a retrospectives, or maybe even not EFI, but like whatever EFI is. So like a um, hard fork policies or stuff like that. I don't know what the wording would be, but like that subsection that has EFI.
I guess it might be hard to decide what will go into it until we define what the new upgrade process will be.
Good point.
well, what I would like to hear what from the group you would like to see in a repository like that. Given that we could do whatever we want in it, what would you like to see? Pie in the sky kind of stuff.
I think you should write up that question and the naming question and post it in the Telegram post meeting, because then we can think about it more and I'll reply in there.
That's a good idea.
One last question on this. This is related to the PR that I have already made. So, if I understand it correct, I have to hold on to this one, and when the new repository will be created, I have to just close and create a new PR over there. And any other suggestion on this change of any part of the PR? I saw one comment from Light Client that even the template could be an informational one. I'm fine with that, but other than that, if people have any other feedback for this to be submitted as a pull request to the new repository, feel free to add a comment there.
Okay. We have about 5 more minutes. The last places, let me review action items from the last meeting.
James, if I may ask for one more agenda item to be covered quickly, I think it can be done quickly. The number four, standard citation format. I think this proposal is almost on the final call. So Micah was asking if somebody has any objection on that. I mean, that is just about the standardization of footer for all EIPs. If people can give it a look.
It adds citations, or is it the same citation for each one, or is it individual ones?
I think that is about a citation for every EIP that people should be using, referring.
I think it's good. So if it's citations for EIP specifically, I think that is good. I think it would be more ethical, because if it's using work from someone else that's copyrighted, I think it should be referenced or linked back to the original work. I looked at the PR, it looked like just static text, or I wasn't quite sure how is it taking part of a section of an EAP and putting it in there, or is it just one citation for every single EAP?
I think it's an edit to the layout, the template EIP. So that in the template there would be, I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out what the hell this is. I
Exactly.
thought it was for the eips.ethereum.org.
So this looks like it's for the website for EIPs.
I might be wrong though.
So not
In the
Ethereum.org.
This is what is confusing me.
Anyway, we just wanted to bring it to attention. So even if people find anything to be commented on, this is something getting into final stages. So feel free to go ahead and comment on that pull request.
Okay. Any other things you'd like covered, Pooja, in the last minute?
No, I think I'm done. Thank you so much.
Great.
So you can go ahead with the last item, whatever it is.
Well, I'll review the action items. At 12.1, Edson will make a survey to conduct editors on the expectation from an editor, time commitment, qualifications, and he did that. 12.2, James will look at the necessary permissions and how to set up users with the triaging capabilities. And I talked with Hudson about that, and then we talked about that today. 12.3, a process for removing editors and criteria for removing editors is a future item to discuss. We did not discuss that today, so we should add that to being discussed at a later time. 12.4, link to the live EFI document through EIP1 rather than continuously updating EIP1. EIP1 can be used as a hub for statuses. This is changed to having a repository for coordinating network upgrades. 12.5, remove emergency comms from EIP agenda until it becomes pertinent, which we did that. So thank you, everybody.
Okay, I figured it out just before we go. This is for the EIP.html Jekyll layout file. So this has stuff like okay. So basically if you go to eips.ethereum.org and you click on an EIP and it gives the header information like the author and stuff, and then it gives the content of the EIP. At the very bottom, all it does is it says, please cite this document as, and then it gives the IEEE specification for reference formatting to include the author, the EIP number, the title, what status it's in, and stuff like that, and where it's available. So it just, I think it's fine to merge.
Oh, that makes sense. I agree. I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna just put a comment in there saying this looks good.
Thank you.
and have a great Wednesday.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
2 weeks.
Cheers.
2 weeks. Yep.
Bye, everyone. See you in 2 weeks.